Are you going through a divorce? Do you know someone who's going through a divorce? Or have you contemplated going through a divorce? If you said yes to any of those questions, today's conversation with my guest Molly is the episode for you. We're talking all about the self-empowerment piece that comes with going through a divorce and how divorce doesn't always have to be a sad journey and how it doesn't always have to be devastating for the rest of your life, even though it can be devastating in the moment. My guest Molly joins me today to talk about how we can continue or start to live a bright and authentic life post-divorce. Molly Rubesh is a wife, blended mom of 4, life coach, and author of the children's book Is Heaven Farther Than the North Pole? After 20 years in the pharmaceutical and medical device industry, Molly left the corporate world to pursue a career where she could find more meaning in helping others. She's had her fair share of adversity, starting with a divorce, which ended her 11-year marriage in 2017. After Molly met her now husband, his ex-wife died, leaving them to love and raise her 2 stepsons through the grief of their biological mother. Just as things started to settle down, Molly's dad died in 2021. This journey has given Molly the perspective she has today, that joy and sadness can coexist. Molly is sure that with support, we can find the joy in the hard times and build a life that we love. She encourages women to step into their fullest authenticity by going after what they want in this life. Let's get into our conversation with Molly. Molly, welcome to the Happiness Happens podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I am too. And when we were first talking and you were telling me about you and what you do, I was like, this conversation needs to happen and it needs to be on the podcast because this is such a timely conversation, in my opinion, right now. But before we get into all the good stuff, I have to ask you a question that I ask every single guest before they come on my show, when they come on my show. And it's, what does happiness mean to you?
Happiness is something that kind of lives within yourself. I don't think that you can find happiness in material things. And so, a moment that I love each night is right before I go to bed, as I'm about to fall asleep, and I picture all my children in their own beds, safe in their beds. I'm with my husband, whom I love, and I'm just happy. That in that moment of peace, all is well in the world, all the tasks are done for the day, and that's pure bliss. So
I
I define that.
I love that. And you said something that is so key in there, and that its happiness is found within. And I
Yeah.
think that's super timely for our conversation today. And it's probably a lot of the work that you do as a divorce coach with your clients. Would you say that that is the hardest thing that women have to sort of come to terms with when they're faced with something like a divorce?
You know, Happiness is a really tough term because I remember really early on in my divorce journey, I was seeing a therapist and I
Yeah.
was going and I was talking to her about all the things that were wrong with my soon to be ex husband. And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted things to be fixed and I wanted, him. And what I really learned on my mental health journey is that there was a lot of things that I could fix within me. And we aren't able to fix everybody else in this world. We can only respond to our own behaviors and our own reactions. And I came into her office one day early on and I said, I just want to be happy. I'm done. I'm done with the fighting. I just want to be happy. And she was like, Molly, it doesn't work like that. You have to feel the emotions. You have to go through the journey. You can't just will yourself to be happy. And then you feel shame for not being happy because you have all these
Mm-hmm.
blessings in your life and it's a really intertwined mess.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to find moments of joy, I kind of like joy and sadness. You can be sad that you're getting a divorce, but also really joyful and happy and excited about what your future may hold,
Mm-hmm.
or that you're going to have some independence, or you're going to finally step into your truest authenticity. So it's more of a state of mind or being, but we also have to give ourselves grace and recognize that we can't live in happiness every minute of every day.
I agree with you. And I think one thing that has been really hard for my own self as I'm going through, my own divorce journey, which has been honestly, like I would say I want to say like I don't have it as bad as most people. You know what I mean? Like it's so amicable and there's a lot of respect and there's a lot of love still there and a lot of I would say ultimately just respect. And
Yeah.
I still had such a hard time because I knew that I needed to feel every emotion. And I knew that I needed to honor all the sadness and the guilt and like the shame and all the stuff that still comes, even though it's not an everyday present feeling now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm in all of these different divorce groups. So one of the things that I started doing was going to these divorce support groups, you know, online on Facebook. I went to one in person and all this stuff. And there's so much anger in those
Yeah.
groups because the people are so, and they're women's groups, so I'll just say women. I'm sure for men they feel the same way, but there's so much anger in those groups. And I almost always want to reply and be like, but if you just work on yourself, you know what I mean? Like you'll be okay. But you know, how do you sit through that discomfort of, you know, you have to feel the emotion, you have to let it process, but you don't want to? Then what? I feel like you just get stuck.
Well, I think you get stuck if you're trying to suppress it. So
Mm,
if you're sad, like if packing the boxes or signing that paperwork is sad, let's be sad. Let the tears flow, validate that, give it space. Your emotions have to come out. So if we push them down because I just have to be happy or I just have to put on a good face, that
mhm.
is essentially why, as women, sometimes we get stuck in life because
Mm,
we're taught very early on as children is be a good girl, smile, behave, just be happy, be the nice girl. And so maybe that's why we were in a marriage longer than we should have been,
yeah.
because we didn't step into like, I'm mad. I don't like this. This is sad. So really, you'll be less stuck if you allow the emotions to move through your body and come
Mm.
out to the other side where you can find pure happiness or joy.
Or bliss or whatever the
Bliss.
word. I feel like they can be so interchangeable
Yeah.
too. I want to hear a little bit about your journey. So you found yourself in this unexpected divorce, correct? Unexpected.
Yeah.
And so paint us like a picture. Like what was that like for you when you had to go through all of that process? Because now you sit at a place where, you know, you're remarried now and you have incredible stepchildren and your own children and you're co-parenting and doing all the things. But that's not without so much struggle to get to that point. Paint us a little bit of a picture what that looked like for you.
Yeah. I think that my ex husband and I had ebbs and flows of things working and things not. And it was
Mm,
always kind of this impending event like, are we going to make it and are we not going to make it? But I kept it all in. I didn't share that with the outside world. I didn't tell a lot of my friends. I didn't confide in my family with how much of the struggle there was. And so when it finally got to the point that we decided that we were going to get divorced, it was really stressful. It was very painful, very stressful, lots of tears, lots of, I don't want to say hate, but fighting, lots of animosity. And
mhm,
I was really much in a state of fight or flight during that time frame. And seeing my therapist, I got really great advice to get a therapist, get a divorce lawyer, and see a financial advisor. And I highly recommend that to anybody that's going through a divorce. You
mm,
can, a therapist or a divorce coach, seek somebody that's really going to be able to hold space for you.
yeah.
And so I was going through that. And as we got to the point that we told the kids and we started admitting this to our friends and family, taking off my ring, I was like so upset about that part and the shame around it, and saying to corporate America, and I was in a leadership role, that I'm now going to be a single divorced mom. I was so worried about these labels and what are
Mhm,
people going to think of me. So I had to do a lot of my own work to come full circle and be able to embrace that a divorce doesn't define me. I'm still Molly, and I can still be a wonderful mother, and I can still co-parent with my ex-husband. So that that's probably what kept me stuck in my marriage longer than I should have, is the stigma of what will others think of me, and how do I be a divorced mom, because I didn't want to be a divorced mom. I wanted to
right.
be married.
You want to be married. Exactly. And especially just, I mean, depending on like how you were raised and the values, your family values, and like the expectations of parents, that's a really hard one.
Right.
You know, people are taught to like fight for the marriage, fight for the this, fight for that. And it's just kind of like, but there is a point where if something doesn't make you happy anymore, it's okay to let it go.
Right.
And I think knowing the why behind that is super important. What would you say?
I think, I state that anybody who says divorce is the easy way out has likely never been through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, the this doesn't come lightly. We don't want to have failed marriages. We didn't step on the altar the day we got married with the intent of it getting a divorce. So if we could give everybody a little bit more grace and recognize that this is probably a really deep personal journey
Mm-hmm.
and didn't come to that decision lightly, that's how we can open our hearts to love others, and that's how we can have ourselves have more acceptance in our own journey. It's okay. It's
That's
okay.
beautiful. I love that. That is so beautiful. And I think too, we put extra pressure on ourselves. Like we were saying before, like that extra shame, that extra guilt, the extra this, I didn't do this. I should have done more of this. I failed at this. I could have been better at this. And it's like, at the end of the day, I believe, these are my beliefs, that life is a journey and our entire lives are a journey. And we don't always get to know how that happens or how it ends or what we're going to go through. But if you look at your life now, I mean, you're remarried and you
Yep.
have two stepkids and
Mhm.
you are co-parenting, and that's just proof that things can be okay, but you have to look inwards and like do that work on yourself. I truly feel like otherwise you just get stuck in that anger, and like I've seen people stay stuck in that anger for years, 20 years, 30 years, never
Yeah.
being able to let it go.
No.
It can ruin your life.
And living bitter is not something that you've had multiple guests on recently that just kind of talk about like the belief and the small actions and the small action steps, and you can be sad and you can feel those emotions, and of course you can be angry or mad about circumstances, but to live with a chip on your shoulder is only hurting you. So to
Mhm.
be able to like really step into like, okay, this is a circumstance and it wasn't fun, but there's a lot of beauty waiting on the other side of a divorce. There's a lot of life waiting on the other side. And your kids, if you have children, your kids will be fine. They will.
Let's talk about that actually, because something that I hear a lot is, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe, we're going to get separated. We're going to get a divorce. We're ruining the kids' lives. The kids are not going to be okay. Like, how are they going to handle it?" Or like, the other story of like, "You've abandoned our family, you're ruining our family," like all of that kind of stuff. Let's talk about the kids though, because you've seen it. You literally watched it happen. So how
Yeah.
were your kids in the process? Like, you don't have to tell like too much because they are still kids. I'm sure you want to protect them a little bit. But what was that process like for them?
Initially, they were really upset, and because they were little. I mean, they were 10 and
Yeah.
7 at the
Yeah.
time, and they were like, well, what are, don't tell my friends, and what are we going to do?
Oh.
And but once they realized that we I said, you're still going to have mommy and daddy. You're still going to have your homes. You're still going to have us. You're still going to get picked up from school. You're still going to have your backpack. And once they realized that their little bubble was still going to be fine, they could still have their friends over and still have us. It just was look a little different. And
Yeah.
then my ex-husband and I did a really good job of when we were at sporting events, we would sit by each other. We never made them choose, like,
Yeah.
you want to sit over here or do you want to sit over there? Do you want to go to his house or my house? Like, my daughter is a teenager right now and she likes to be here. This is where her clothes are. I help her do her hair. I'm her mom. She
Yeah.
wants to be here. So her dad is okay with that. Like, they go out to dinner or they do their own little thing to keep their relationship, but we don't make her choose. Like, who do you love
Mm.
more and who do you want to be at? And so if you can take the pressure off of your children, it is no fault of their own that they have two homes. So if they left their sporting stuff at the other person's house, just go get it. Don't punish them. Don't be mad at them. I mean, there's a way for us to manage it as adults, and give
Mm-hmm.
them the space and to recognize that they're still able to have a voice and a life and not have to be in the struggle. Like, that's my night. I'm coming right now. Because that is
Mm-hmm.
when you do hurt your children.
100%. And my parents separated when we were kids and divorce, all that, whatever. It's actually funny. They're not legally divorced. They never got legally divorced because they were like, well, we don't really see the need to. So they're actually still technically married. It's been like 20 years or something like that.
Interesting.
And they're just still separated because they were like, well, we don't want to like pay for all the stuff, blah, blah, blah. And they're friends, like they're amicable. So it was great. But one thing that I always appreciated that they did was they never made us choose, which was so nice. And they never talked badly about each other in front of us. Like, when you're young and you're like, mom is being so mean and she's this and she's that. Oh my God. They would always say, like, to the opposite, like about the other parent, they would always say, but that is still your mom and that is still your dad. And you got to love them the same. And, what mom says goes. Mom's right. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. They always still were able to support each other. And I think that is so key because I think people make it so much about themselves that they don't really care about, not that they don't, I think they do care about what happens to their children, but they're so invested in being like, because let's be honest, like a lot of the times, more often than not, I think divorce can be pretty messy, especially when one person makes more money than another. One parent maybe stays home, another one doesn't. Like, there's so many different scenarios, and not
Right.
people aren't always nice, right?
Right.
But I think the more you take your own like story out of it and focus on your kids, like we did holidays together, we did birthdays together, and we still do. And I'm 32. Okay, they separated when I was like 11 or 12 or something, and we always did Christmases together, we always did birthdays, and I always loved that. And I know it's not for everybody, but it worked for our family. So yeah.
Yeah, I had a college friend that decided to have a destination wedding because her mother and father couldn't be in the same place at the same time. And I thought, that what a shame to her to have changed her wedding plans. Maybe destination wedding was going to be her plan anyway, but
Yeah,
it shouldn't have been because she had to protect her mother and father. Like, my kids won't ever have to feel that way. Like, we'll both walk them down the aisle if they want us to. I mean, we'll do what they
exactly. Exactly, totally, 100%. Okay, so you go through this really painful divorce. Your children are, hurt in the beginning, and then they start to find their new normal and their new path.
want.
And so did you, right? You started to find your new normal, your new path, and grow into, probably a totally, not totally different person, but I'm sure way more. I want to use the word enlightened. I don't know if that's the right word.
I know what you're trying to say.
You know what I mean?
My husband now was also going through a divorce at the same time,
Oh
and
wow.
we kind of got married about the same time. We got divorced about the same time, and when we met each other, we were so excited, and we have kind of come into this relationship better because
Mm-hmm.
we know kind of our weaknesses that maybe we had played into our first marriage. We know
Yeah.
the strengths that played in. We know what our expectations are of a partner and what a healthy relationship should or should not look like.
Right.
So I believe we are better in our second marriage than we were in our first.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that has to do with our own professional, our personal development, and showing up for each other in a way that we work at the marriage versus just
Mm.
expecting when you're young and you get married and you just kind of establish these roles. And it's just a lot different the second time if you lay the foundation.
I agree with you completely. And you have a totally different perspective. And I think you have more clarity on exactly what you want because you know more of who you are. I mean,
Right.
I think for my own self, going through a divorce has been the most eye opening process to who I am as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can take that into whatever it is you're doing next, the level of self awareness is unbelievable. Like,
Yeah,
I think if you choose for it to be that way though, and if you choose to look inwards at all of the things and the shortcomings you also had, because we all do, everyone contributes to both sides of everything.
definitely.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that.
So, on the flip side of all of this, what have been some of the biggest gifts that this whole journey has brought you?
Well, I believe I'm very proud of my mental health journey, and I don't know that I would have really, like, I wouldn't have sought out therapy without it being like, I need to come fix this. And
Mm.
really, it navigated to how do I fix me and how do I tap into who I am. And I'm so proud. I'm so vocal of it. It has taken me to be happy in my journey. I'm very curious. I look at next things. I'm self-help and therapy and coaching, and it's just taken me down a whole different path that I don't know that I would have gone down without being forced to from a divorce
Totally.
perspective and being so desperate.
Hmm.
So I highly encourage everybody to seek a coach or a therapist before crisis starts, so then you're better armed when things do happen. But then I also am very blessed that I have a beautiful husband and
Mm.
his two children that are my stepsons, and we have a wonderful blended family of 4 kids, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
I love that. One thing that someone told me once, and I've heard this so many different times, and it's kind of shocking to me, that blended families don't work, that it's too hard for the kids, that it's too challenging, it's just too confusing and all that. I'm guessing that's not your experience.
It is not my experience. And I think that whoever says those kind of things are the same people that say, divorce is the easy way out. There's not
It's
an
true.
absolute on anything. I mean, parenting is hard,
Mm.
regardless of if it's a blended family or your biological children. We have 4 kids, so there's a lot of factors. They're all very different. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are some days that there's a lot of factors that go into step kids, step parents, and there's just a different dynamic. Our situation is a little bit different because my boy's biological mom died shortly after I came into their life. And so I
Oh,
am their full-time parent. I am their
yeah.
full-time living mother. So we operate, I am their stepmom by genetics, but
Right.
from a full perspective, I'm their mom. They call
Mm.
me mom, and so we blend well, and it's just the way that it is. And I think it ties really great into your happiness happens message, because it we have grief, we have divorce, life is hard, we have blending step families, and we still find joy and we
Hmm.
still find happiness. So I'm not saying that it's all sunshine and roses every minute of every day, but we choose to find joy in our time together and in our life
Mm.
together.
I love that. Do you remember the first time you met your stepkids?
Yes.
Was it a good experience or were they confused or, so on, so on?
They were little boys, and so they
Aw.
kind of were just like, oh,
Who's this?
what's this lady doing? I don't think they gave it much thought. I don't know that they were giving their a lot of thought into, who's dad bringing over. I was just another
Yeah.
person. I could have been a neighbor across the street for all they cared,
Yeah.
and as long as they kept doing their own thing. So
I love
it
that.
was natural and easy. It was kind of around Halloween, so we carved pumpkins and we did, some fun
Oh,
activities, and it was
that's
easy.
so cute. I love that. And the reason why I asked that question is because, again, part of these like online divorce groups that I'm in, I see these people post all the time things like, I can't believe that, he's introducing someone new to her. I can't believe my kids are meeting someone new. This is so bad for them. They're going to be so confused, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, is it really that bad for them? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's like there's a lot of nuance in that, but it can't all be bad, right?
No, and I mean, I understand that. I think initially you don't want it to be something where they're meeting new women every couple weeks
Oh, for
and
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
bonding. But the reality is, like, my ex is engaged, and
Mm,
the more people that love our children, the better. Now,
yeah.
again, it's not always perfect. I don't want to put on a situation where everybody's like, well, mine isn't that way.
Molly's
We
life is
choose.
perfect.
Right, no, it's not. But we choose it to be that way. We find a way to get along. We put our best foot forward. We don't have confrontation. We're not sending snarky messages back and forth. Could I?
Hmm.
Sure. But do I? No. So we choose to take the path that, and that allows the kids to never have to choose. I
Yeah.
tell my children, you never have to choose whether you love dad and dad's house more than you love me. And I tell my boys, my stepsons, that like their mom has died and they never have to choose between missing and loving her and wishing she was
Mm,
here and loving the life that we have together with their brothers and sisters and
right.
me. So it's messy and it can be beautiful. It can be both.
I love that. That's beautiful. What would you say to someone who's listening right now who's kind of on the fence and is like, I think that divorce is my next right step, but I just don't know what to do. Where would someone even begin?
I would highly encourage them to hire a therapist or a divorce coach to just prepare. One,
Yeah.
deal with the shame or the guilt that is going to come along with it.
Yeah.
To work on a plan, a strategic plan on how to tell the kids and how to tell their families and make that final decision. And you just need ultimate support. So sometimes friends want to jump in and be like, oh my gosh, he's such a jerk. Yes, 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 you need to go. That's not necessarily helpful. We
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
unbiased people like a coach that can hold space for you and be
Mm,
able to hear, be able to listen without it crossing emotional feelings or me trying to
mm-hmm.
jump in and make people a villain. It's just
Agreed.
somebody really needs the support network.
I love that. I think that's really great. Do you feel like there's anything that you would have loved to have said today that maybe wasn't said?
I just want everybody that is listening, if they're contemplating divorce or they're going through grief or even just stuck in a dead end job, to
Mm,
recognize that you have one life to live and there is so much beauty waiting for you on the other side. Quit feeling like you're trapped in a way that because of your paradigm, the what my culture will think or what the church will think or what my parents will say. We got to start stepping in and living in our most truest form to really find happiness and joy.
I love that. I'm going to ask you my last question, and it's the question that I ask all of my guests when they come on the show. And so I've actually been asking this question for 3 years, and only sometimes do I get the same answer twice, but most people have a different answer, which is actually kind of wild. What's one way that my listener can create a little more happiness in their day every day starting today?
I would say taking a few minutes each day and just doing a mindfulness meditation, dropping into their heart center and recognizing that their truest self is calling them to do X, whatever it is. Phone a friend, call their mom, go to the gym, eat nutritious food. It doesn't matter what it is. But if you really tap into your heart center and you really take a minute to listen to that little voice inside, you will be guided to what will bring you happiness today.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And where can our listeners find you today?
You can find me at my website, mollyrubesh.com. It's Rubesh, or on Instagram, Molly_Rubesh. And I also would love to have some of your listeners sign up for a free consultation and a free discovery
Mm.
call on my website if they're wondering if coaching is a good fit for them.
I love that. I'll make sure that those links are all in the show notes below so everyone can grab them really easily. But thank you so much, Molly, for joining me today, joining us today, and for shifting the perspective I think that a lot of the people have around what a divorce can look like.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode on the Happiness Happens podcast. I always appreciate you being here. If you loved our conversation, be sure to reach out to both of us so that we can hear from you and hear what you loved. I hope you have a beautiful day today. And remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.